What's up, guys? I have been daily driving the Galaxy Z Fold 4 for a pretty good long while now, and I think it's finally time to share my thoughts about this device with you kind people in the form of this review. So if you're interested in seeing what a Surface Duo user thinks about the Galaxy Z Fold, how I feel about this device in general, this is a good place to be. Let's start things off on this device by talking about the hardware. And a lot of people, when they saw the unboxing that I did, especially after I put the case on, they said, my goodness, that is such a thick, chunky looking phone. And you know, it is, right? But it's a tablet that folds over, and it's it's not a Surface Duo that manages to be, you know, almost impossibly thin, right? This is not the same sort of device as this, although it is much more narrow. So in terms of pocketability, I think that it's, you know, kind of a trade-off, honestly. In some ways, this might be more pocketable than Duo. Really, it's going to depend on like what kind of pants you wear, as silly as that might sound. If you wear tighter jeans, this might be a better fit than the Duo because of the width. If you have a bigger thigh, the Duo might be a bigger fit for you. Anyways, I digress. Let's talk about the hardware here. So on the front, you have a very tall, skinny screen that is not as tall and skinny as it was before, but it is still quite narrow. On the side here, we do have a volume rocker and then a fingerprint scanner that is built into the power button, and it is very fast and very reliable. I'm quite pleased with this fingerprint scanner in general. Really, really good. You have a speaker up top, a speaker down below, so full stereo sound, USB-C, I believe that is a microphone. There on the back side, you have 3 cameras, which are a 50 megapixel standard, 10 megapixel, 3x optical, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide. And I think the 50 bends down to like 12, I think is what they do, something like that, 12.2 maybe. On the front side here, we have a 10 megapixel selfie camera, and then underneath this giant tablet display is a 4 megapixel under display camera, and I believe it's actually like a 12 as well, or a 10 maybe, but it bends down to 4 for whatever reason. That's just how they do it. They're trying to catch more light, so they're bending is what I would assume. You can see that mine is I've got the hole punch kind of just turned on there. You could do this yourself by going to good lock, and then under multi-star, I'll turn the under display camera like back on normal so you can kind of see it there. You can see, I believe, on the camera how it's picking it up. I just don't like the way it looks. It's got a weird shimmering thing going on to me. Yeah, in some ways, in some lighting, it's not super noticeable, but for me, I'm not bothered by the hole punch, so I have it just filled with black because it hurts my eyes. Otherwise, both screens are 120 hertz. Both screens look really, really good. You will notice that when you're looking straight on at the screen, you are not going to see that crease. If you get off axis, though, or light hits it just right, you will be able to see it at that point. It does seem to be a little bit less pronounced than it was on prior Z Folds, although that might just be newness. It might slowly become more pronounced over time. Hard to say just yet. Something that's also worth mentioning is just the general shape of these screens. I think it's very good for some things and not so good for other things, and the same can be said of the cover display. So for some things like Twitter, I think that the cover display is actually really quite solid. You can scroll for a long time, and it's fine. It's an app that does well with a tall aspect ratio. When you go to the tablet, though, what you get is this really stretched out Twitter that just doesn't really make good use of that display. I just don't think it's a super great experience. Twitter needs to do more with it. Now with YouTube, it's a similar experience. This is okay, right? You can see your other videos you're looking at, maybe look at the comments and things like that. But when you go full screen, you know, you've got really big black bars and you can zoom in, but then you're losing a lot of content on the other sides. So there's a lot of kind of give and take here when it comes to the screen, the aspect ratio, the real estate that you are given. I do think it lends itself to things like multitasking, though. So if I have a YouTube video over here and I want to put Twitter on the other screen, that is quite good. But again, you know, if you're looking to do one thing at a time and it is a YouTube video like that, it might not be overall the most optimal experience because you are going to be wasting a decent amount of that screen. So I've heard a lot of people talk about this and say that, yeah, the screens, you know, they're nice and they're pretty, but they're kind of both not quite what you would hope that they would be. They're both slightly suboptimal, which I can somewhat understand. We are, of course, rocking the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, which is absolutely fantastic on this device. We also have, I believe, 12 gigs of RAM, and I think 256 storage is your basic. So the specs are pretty much off the charts with everything except for maybe the camera array, which is still pretty normal, pretty basic cameras. You would love to see on an $1,800 device like a really top of the line camera setup, but instead what you get is something that I think scrapes the bottom end of flagship without actually beating something like a Pixel 6 or upcoming 7 or the S22 Ultra, something like that. If I can pop this case off here, the color that I have is called gray green, and depending on the lighting, it kind of looks gray green. Sometimes it looks more gray blue. I do like that it is matte. It does not show fingerprints at all. I really like the color, and you can kind of see there without the case on how much thinner it actually is. They've actually squared off the edges as well, which changes the hand feel quite a bit. I do have the S Pen case on there that actually came with it. That is super, super useful. And then you can, with this case, you can pop that off as easy as that and pop on a really pretty decent kickstand, which is great if you're going to use this thing in a sort of viewing setup, because you can just sort of set it down and watch whatever content you are going to be watching. So that is super nice. I've been keeping the S Pen on there though, because I'm trying my best to like find excuses and reasons to use the S Pen, because it's actually very good. I just have no real use case for it. Just trying to find things I can do with it here and there. Primarily what I've been doing with it, and this may sound silly, but I use on Windows the snipping tool all the time. So on here, what I've been doing is I've been using a similar snipping tool where you can grab a certain portion of the screen and then you can maybe, you know, draw on it or whatever that you want to do and then send it to somebody. I wish that there was a way to do this, and then as an option down here under maybe in between share and download was like copy to clipboard, and then I could just paste it to somebody. That would be really, really nice, but that's not a feature that you have, although lots of cool stuff you can do with the S Pen. So that's pretty much it for the hardware. Talking about the software, there's a lot going on here. Well, let's switch to another view so that I can show you the software a bit more easily. So Samsung does all kinds of neat stuff with their software, which is really, really good. So if we open up, let's just do Twitter. I was reading some Tennessee Titans news. You'll see down here at the bottom that you have this taskbar. What you're going to see on the taskbar are the same apps right here that you have on your home screen, right? They just get duplicated down there. You can actually see them shrink down. You also get your two most recent apps over here that you can very quickly simply touch to switch between, right? So that works really, really well. Although another really cool thing you can do is you can grab an app from down there and drag it up and split screen it or floating window. You can put it there, 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 or there. Let's just put it down below. And now you have YouTube there as well as Twitter, which is already running, and that is pretty useful. You can then actually grab another application, like let's open up the app drawer, because right down there is actually an app drawer that will give you access to all of your different applications. Let's grab the Play Store and you can drag it on. Have a third app. Let's go back into our app drawer and let's grab Relay and put it in a floating window. So now we have a whole bunch of stuff going on all at once, and if I go home, I can then actually see that my floating window stays there. Let's close that. I can long press like that on the swipe up gesture, and I can go right back into all of those apps running all at once. All of that stuff is very, very cool. You can also touch in the middle here and save that as a little app pair. So let's say this is a workflow that you really like to do. Well, right there would save it. It would actually pin it down here and allow you to launch it again very, very quickly. In addition to the side taskbar, you still have your Edge panel where you can pin a whole bunch more applications and do the exact same thing. Switch between them, split screen, whatever you want to do. So tons of different ways to go into split screening, but there's actually one more. If we're in Twitter again and I do a 2-finger swipe in from the side, it will slide over and then I can launch a second app. And of course, these apps can be changed in terms of which one gets more space. You can also switch them around this way and change the sizing again. There's just so much flexibility here when it comes to the split screen multitasking. I should also mention you can two-finger swipe from the other side too. Either side works just fine, and I believe maybe you can do it from the top and bottom. Is that accurate? You totally can. So again, absolutely like tons and tons of flexibility. And this thing just flies. Some of this, you may be dropping some frames here on the capturing just because I'm doing this wirelessly. But I'm telling you right now, it is absolutely buttery smooth. This thing flies. And in fact, I have a setting turned on here under performance profile. I'm set to light mode, which is going to save some battery. This isn't even it fully powered up, and it is, trust me, it is so buttery smooth. In terms of battery performance, now like I said, I've kept that setting turned on most of the time. I tend to be able to get from morning, which is like 6 a.m. until bedtime, which is like 9:30 p.m., something like that. And I can do that without having to plug the thing in. I tend to get between 4 and 6 hours of screen on time, so not phenomenal, right? I'm not getting some 8 hours of screen on time or something insane like you might get on an iPhone or something, but for a really big tablet screen, I think that the screen on time it gets is totally good enough. It is a solid one-day phone, and if I was careful and I turned on power saving mode, I could probably make it into the day and a half range. So, you know, again, good, not great battery life, totally sufficient for me though. Keep in mind the charging is 25 watts wired and I believe 15 wireless, which is not the fastest in the world, but in the moments when I'm here at my desk and I look over and I'm like, oh, I'm at 60% battery, it's really easy for me to just plug the thing in, work for 30 minutes, and I'm gonna be pretty much fully charged again. So battery has not been a problem. And really, that's kind of the general experience with this thing. Extreme flexibility, lots of stuff you can do, and really outstanding performance. I would say that in terms of just day-to-day use as that Surface Duo 2 user, you know, I had daily driven this since launch, the Fold 4 is better at literally everything versus the Duo 2, with exception to multitasking. I understand that some people will think I'm crazy for saying this because of the amount of flexibility that the Fold has, the fact that you can have so many apps, you can move them all around. But I will say, and I've done a full video discussing this, so I'm not going to rehash it here, but having two screens is still easier when it comes to launching two apps than it is on the Fold. All the options you have, I still think it's better on Duo. I still think multitasking is better on Duo. I still like the wide screens on Duo. Again, these are all preferences. You're free to like whatever you like. I would put it like this. Surface Duo is the best multitasking phone. Z Fold 4 is the second best multitasking phone. And the gap between Fold and the next device is a chasm, right? Like, if this is a 10, this is a 9, and a normal phone is like a 4. Like, that would be basically how I would put it in terms of multitasking. So it's not like I'm saying they're like worlds and worlds apart. I think Duo is a bit more intuitive because you just launch an app and then you just launch another app and it's just exactly the same. You get the same experience. It's like having two phones right there side by side. So you know how to use a phone, you know how to use two phones. This requires additional steps and more learning, but it is very customizable, and it is very flexible, and it is so flipping smooth that I can understand a Duo lover saying, I'll take a slight downgrade in that multitasking workflow. I'll adjust to that one, number drop to then get all the other stuff that Samsung has, all the customizations, all of that incredible smoothness. I don't think Duo 2 is super janky. I think it's fine, but Fold 4 is just a smoother phone. The touch response is still just a touch better. It's just such a smooth, performant phone. Let's take a second now and let's talk about the camera. I've already told you what the camera setup is, the kind of hardware that you're dealing with, but now let's actually look at some samples. So this is a shot with the standard lens. You got some sun peeking out from behind these clouds. This was very early in the morning. You've got pretty good detail up here in these clouds, pretty good detail on the bricks of this building. If I go to the zoom lens, you can see that in good lighting, it's pretty good. In bad lighting, maybe I shouldn't even say bad, in suboptimal lighting, it gets pretty grainy and isn't that great. But here, it holds up fairly well. Again, the standard lens here on up close subjects, you get really nice bokeh. This is not portrait mode. This is just shallow depth of field because it's got a relatively large sensor. Using pro mode to get in really close and use manual focus, you can see the colors are super punchy. Note the spider hiding behind this flower. Actually, really like this shot. Portrait mode in particular on this dog turned out really well. I mean, this is just tack sharp, super detailed. The focus falling off is just, it's really well done. If Google Photos will fix itself there. Really nice and smooth. Colors look really punchy. Just a fantastic job there. This is cropped a little bit, so it's a little bit of a misrepresentation, but the wide angle is just okay as well. When you really zoom in, the details they're fine. It's nothing incredible. The colors are incredibly like tuned up, but overall the wide angle lens is okay. I think video is pretty decent as well. If we look here at a shot that was filmed indoors, you can see that, you know, details okay. When I zoom in here in a moment with the telephoto, you get an idea of kind of how smooth that is zooming in. Like I said, it's nothing incredible, right? But it is definitely sufficient, and the smoothness, right? The stabilization is very strong. Let's listen to it for a moment. You may be able to hear a few things in this video. Probably not the best example in terms of audio from the video, but I think the audio generally is pretty decent. The camera setup is good. I'd give it probably something like a 7.5 out of 10. It's not incredible, right? It's not, you know, this world-beating camera setup, but it's pretty good. You've got a really nice pro mode. Personally, I really like taking photos with the tablet screen. In particular, when I'm using that pro mode with manual focus to really get in close, like taking a picture of that flower, use that and the focus peaking, man, you can really make sure your picture is really nice. Who has a viewfinder that is that big? It's a really nice experience to use. So I actually like the camera a bit more than it, like the technical results would lead you to think I would like it. It's a really nice experience, and I do like the fact that, you know, as a Duo user, that I can be right here and double click the power button and boom, I'm taking a photo very quickly. I'm not having to worry about holding it in some awkward position. I do miss, strangely enough, I do miss, you know, taking the picture and seeing the result here on a big screen. I do miss putting the viewfinder down here and using it almost like a periscope at times. Things I do miss about Duo's camera, but Fold really holds its own, and it is just, it's super performant, and the results are very consistent. That's probably where it steps up over Duo, is just inconsistency. Most every shot's going to be pretty good. Shutter lag is actually a bit worse on the Fold than it is on Duo for me, but it's not so bad that like it's going to make me miss very many shots. It's just a slight delay here and there. It's also worth pointing out though that you can open up the camera app. You can then hit this little button up top, which then turns on the cover display preview, and then you can click selfie up there and then use the primary cameras as your selfie shooter instead of having to use the selfie cameras, which are in fact actually quite bad. We'll take a couple of samples here and I'll let you see them. So using the cover display's selfie camera, we'll get that result. Let's open it up and use the under display camera. And let's take a look at both of these results. And you'll see that the one on the cover display is okay, but it's really not that great. And then the one under the display is, I mean, it's terrible. It's really bad. Personally, the trade-off of having an under display camera to have camera performance that is that horrible, I don't really think it's worth it. Your mileage may vary. That being said, you can do this and get a very different type of result, because now you're using the primary lens and portrait mode is going to be really good. So just do that, I guess would be what I would tell you to do. Personally, I mean, I would have said, if you're going to do this, don't even put a camera on the other display and just let's turn around and do that, whatever. Maybe it's there for video calling, I guess is what I hear people saying. So we're coming up on the 20-minute mark, and I'm sure I could probably keep going for a lot longer, but I have to stop this video at some point. There will be some things that I'm going to miss. Drop some comments, and I'll answer as many questions as I can get around to answering. But let's kind of wrap this up. Simple question. Is the Z Fold 4 good? The answer is yes. It's absolutely fantastic. The Z Fold 2 was one of my top 5 favorite phones of all time, and the Z Fold 4 is better than the Fold 2 in every conceivable way, okay? The screens are better, the high refresh rate on the cover display is wider, S Pen support, the cameras are better. The hardware in general is better. The system on a chip is better. The software is better. This is a fantastic device. Is it worth $1,800? That's a question you have to answer, because to most people, no, it's not. To most people, no phone is worth $1,800. But if you're the kind of person that has $1,800 to spend and you don't really care that much about the price, can I recommend it to you? Yeah, it's really, really good. It's a great phone. Is it something I'm going to, just daily drive forever and I'm never going to go back to my Surface Duo? I don't know. I do find myself missing my Duo 2 at times. I'm going to be transparent with you, though. This is paid for, and that phone, the Fold 4, is not paid for. So I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that doesn't have something to do with where my SIM is going to stay. Because, of course, I'm going to want to get my money's worth out of it. I spent a lot of money on it. I'm going to want to use it for a while. But, again, overall, as a total package, Z Fold 4 is one of the best phones I have ever used. It's really, really good. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe on your way out. I will see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.